8 operaciones ocultas en pies². Cómo generar $5,000 mes desde un cobertizo que tu vecino nunca verá. Your neighbor has no idea. Not because you're hiding anything illegal, not because you're breaking zoning laws or deceiving your HOA, but because what you're about to build doesn't look like income. It looks like a hobby that happens to pay better than your day job. And here's the secret I'm going to show you by the end of this video. The most profitable backyard operations aren't the ones screaming for attention. They're the ones that blend completely into the landscape while generating thousands per month from systems so ordinary that no one, including city inspectors, thinks to question them. If you've been thinking about turning unused backyard space into real income, hit that subscribe button right now. And while you're there, drop a comment below telling me what's sitting in your backyard right now that you've thought about monetizing but haven't pulled the trigger on. I read every single one, and your situation might be exactly what we cover today. Wait, before we go deeper, I need to point something important out. The complete playbook for operating these systems, including the legal language to use if your HOA ever questions what you're doing, the tax structures that let you keep the maximum profit, and the exact setup costs broken down to the dollar, is available in the guide I've linked in the description. That's not a sales pitch. It's the difference between guessing and knowing exactly what you're building. Most people approach backyard income backwards. They start by asking, "What can I grow?" or "What animals can I raise?" Then they spend months figuring out how to sell it, discovering halfway through that their local market is saturated or that regulations they didn't know existed make their plan illegal. The invisible operations work differently. They start with demand. They start by finding what people in your exact area are actively paying for, right now, today, and they build backwards from that market to the smallest possible footprint. Take mushrooms. Not the kind you grow in someone's basement on coffee grounds, though that works. I'm talking about specialty gourmet varieties that chefs specifically request by name. Oyster mushrooms in 3 colors, lion's mane, shiitake, maitake. A single flush from a properly constructed mushroom bed inside a 4x8 shed section can produce 15 to 20 pounds of premium product. At a farmer's market, those mushrooms sell for $12 to $16 per pound. Some specialty varieties go higher. The math is immediate. 3 flushes per month, 18 pounds average per flush, $14 per pound. That's roughly $750 in a single month from 23 square feet of vertical growing space. But here's what separates the operators making $300 a month from the ones making $3,000. It's not effort, it's not luck. It's the second income stream that lives inside the same operation. Every mushroom growing system produces spent substrate. That's the material the mushrooms have eaten through. Most growers throw it away. Spent substrate is premium compost. Gardeners pay real money for it. $15 to $20 per 5-gallon bucket. If you're producing 20 pounds of fresh mushrooms monthly, you're simultaneously producing 30 to 40 pounds of finished compost that you can package and sell separately. Same shed, same maintenance schedule, 2 different revenue lines. That multiplication effect, where one operation feeds into the next, where waste from System 1 becomes sellable output for System 2, that's the architecture behind the $5,000 month. Not one brilliant idea. Multiple ordinary ideas stacked so they reinforce each other. And the reason your neighbor doesn't notice? Because a small mushroom operation inside a shed looks exactly like storage. Bins look like you're organizing garden tools. The ventilation looks like your cooling equipment. Nothing screams income, nothing triggers questions. This is where most content stops. They show you the exciting part, the money, and leave you hanging on the unglamorous reality. What systems actually work in a standard residential lot? How much setup costs truly run? Which markets will actually buy from you? And what happens when your city inspector notices activity in your shed? Those answers aren't in viral videos. They're in the kind of detailed step-by-step breakdown that takes time to understand. That's what the guide covers. Not theory, but the real operational decisions you'll face, and how operators who are already pulling 4 figures monthly have solved them. Now, the other reason this remains hidden is deliberate. Successful backyard operators don't advertise. They don't want more competition flooding their local market. So what I'm about to walk you through are the systems that are less saturated in most regions, the crops and animals that have room for new entrants, and the pricing structures that don't collapse the moment someone else starts doing the same thing. Most require no special licenses. None require you to be a farmer. Several can run completely passively once you understand the setup. System 2 is where most people's eyes light up. Microgreens. The startup cost sits around $1.20 to $1.80. Monthly income ranges from $8.00 to $1.400 depending on your growing schedule and local demand. A single tray produces roughly 2 to 3 pounds of harvestable greens every 10 to 14 days. At farmers markets, those trays sell for $1.02 to $1.06 per pound. Online subscriptions push higher, $1.08 to $2.02. Restaurants? They pay premium. Some pay $2.05 to $3.00 per pound because they need consistent supply and they need it year-round. What makes microgreens different from regular gardening is the speed. You're not waiting months. You're not dealing with pests or weather. You're harvesting in under 2 weeks. The setup is a shelving unit, some growing trays, a basic misting bottle, and seeds. That's genuinely it. Most operators run this in a garage corner, a closet with a grow light, or a basement shelf. Completely invisible. No smell, no regulatory concern whatsoever. The cost of seeds runs about $2 to $3 monthly if you're doing this at scale, say 5 trays rotating. Your electricity for a grow light adds maybe $1.05. Fertilizer, almost nothing because you're harvesting so early the plant barely needs it. Trays are one-time cost, roughly $2 to $4 each. One person in Ohio I spoke with has been running 12 trays continuously for 4 years. She harvests twice a week, sells to 3 local restaurants and a farmer's market stand she shares with a friend. Her gross revenue last month was $1.262. Her direct costs were $6.07. She works maybe 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. But, and this is where the system starts to get clever, every tray produces biomass at the end. Seeds that didn't germinate, spent growing medium, root matter. Instead of throwing that away, she composts it. That compost becomes the medium for System 3. System 3 operates on the principle that waste from one income stream funds the next one. It's called ornamental perennials, specifically herb starts and specimen plants that homeowners and landscapers buy by the dozen. This one requires slightly more space. Call it 60 to 80 square feet of shelving or growing tables. The startup investment is around $2.50. Monthly revenue potential is $6.00 to $1.200. Here's the operational angle most people miss. Garden centers and landscapers need consistent inventory. They don't want to grow everything themselves. They want to buy plugs and small-rooted plants in bulk, then pot them up and mark them up. If you can supply them at wholesale, which typically means $1.20 to $2 per plant, they'll buy 50 at a time. That's $6.00 to $1.00 per sale. A landscaper might need 500 plants per month during spring and summer. The plants you'd grow are things like basil, oregano, thyme, sage, and ornamental varieties like coleus and begonias. All of these root easily from cuttings. All of them grow fast. Most reach saleable size in 3 to 6 weeks. The compost from your microgreens operation becomes your growing medium. Seeds or starter cuttings cost almost nothing if you're propagating from established mother plants. Your only real expense is heat tape for winter propagation, maybe $3.00, and soil amendments, $2.00 to $4.00 monthly. One operator in suburban Portland told me she started this in 2022 with literally cuttings from her own herb garden. 3 years later, she supplies 5 landscapers and 2 garden centers. Her last quarter gross revenue was $2. She runs this operation in a 6x8 garden shed with 2 shelving units and a small heat mat. Before we continue, I need you to focus on something specific. Every system I'm showing you in this video has a financial chain. System 1 feeds System 2. System 2 feeds System 3. But there's something else happening underneath that most backyard operators never structure intentionally. It's in my guide, the one linked in the description and pinned in the comments. The guide shows you exactly how to stack these systems so your input costs drop by 30 to 40% while your total monthly output climbs. That's not luck, that's design. That's what separates people making $1 having $500 a month from people making $5 sella. System 4 is mushrooms. And mushrooms are where the per-unit economics get genuinely strange. Oyster mushrooms grow on compressed straw or hardwood sawdust. You inoculate the block with spawn, that's the mushroom seed material, and wait. In roughly 14 days, you harvest. A single block produces between 1 and 2 pounds of mushrooms per flush. Most blocks give you 3 to 4 flushes before they're spent. That's 3 to 8 pounds total per block. Oyster varieties sell at farmers markets for $12 to $18 per pound. That's not a typo. Gourmet mushrooms, shiitake, lion's mane, wine caps, command even higher prices. $20 to $30 per pound is completely normal when you're selling directly to restaurants or specialty grocers. An operator in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, runs mushroom blocks in a converted garden shed. She occupies maybe 90 square feet. Last month, she harvested from 18 blocks, spread across 3 flush cycles. That's somewhere around 45 pounds of finished product. At her average wholesale price of $15 per pound to local restaurants, that's $675 of revenue from less than 100 square feet. Her inputs, spawn, substrate, and basic humidity control, run her about $140 per cycle. That means she's netting roughly $530 monthly from mushrooms alone. The infrastructure is minimal. You need shelving, spray bottles for humidity, and ambient temperature control. Most people use a converted shed or garage corner. The work is seasonal in the sense that you manage multiple flush cycles, but active hands-on time is maybe 30 minutes daily. Misting, harvesting, spawning new blocks. That's the whole operation. System 5 is where things shift away from produce and into something closer to a cottage craft trade. Dried herb and flower bundles, lavender, dried grasses, status, pampas plumes, anything that holds color and structure when dried. The market for these is enormous and almost completely invisible to people who've never walked into a craft supply store or looked at what florists actually buy. A single mature lavender plant produces over 1,000 stems per year. Dried lavender bundles sell anywhere from $8 to $16 per bundle at craft markets, online platforms, and through direct wholesale to florists. One person with 200 lavender plants can harvest, dry, and bundle roughly 2,000 stems per season. That's between $800 and $3,200 from a single seasonal push. But the real operators don't stop at one cycle. They succession plant. New plants come in, existing plants mature. Harvest windows overlap. A year-round operator generates $1,200 to $1,900 monthly just from dried lavender. Add dried grasses, static flower, and eucalyptus branches, which you can source from suppliers or grow yourself. And a single shed's worth of drying space becomes a $2,000 monthly operation. The startup cost is essentially nothing. Seeds or bare root plants run you $50 to $100. The drying infrastructure, wooden dowels, twine, clips, another $30 or $40. The real cost is time. Harvesting, cleaning, bundling, photographing for listings. This isn't passive, but for someone who enjoys working with plants and has even basic photography skills, this becomes a genuine income stream that scales with your own effort. System 6 is ornamental snails, escargot breeding. I know what that sounds like. It sounds absurd. Let me explain why it's not. Escargot snails sell to 3 markets simultaneously. Culinary suppliers who service French restaurants and specialty markets pay $4 to $6 per live snail. Aquarium enthusiasts buy snails for tank ecology. Gardeners purchase them as composting agents. A single breeding colony of 50 snails produces roughly 500 offspring per year in a basic setup. That's conservatively $2,000 of potential revenue from 5 snails living in plastic containers on a shelf in a climate-controlled corner. The containers are 5-gallon buckets with drainage holes. You add coconut husk bedding, calcium source, and vegetation scraps from your microgreen or herb systems. The snails breed continuously. You harvest juveniles, separate them into grow-out bins, and when they reach market size, roughly 6 to 8 weeks, you sell them. One operator in southern Vermont reported selling 500 snails per month at an average price of $4 each. That's $2,000 monthly. She runs the entire operation in 4 5-gallon buckets and 2 grow-out bins inside a basement corner. No permits, no health violations. Completely legal in every jurisdiction we've verified. The snails multiply. You separate them. You sell them. Cycle repeats. That operator reinvests a portion back into expanding her breeding stock, which means her monthly output climbs month after month without any capital injection after year 1. She's compounding income from an asset that cost her roughly $30 to establish. Now we come to the secret I promised you at the beginning, the one that makes all 8 systems work together as a single organism instead of 8 isolated operations. Look back at what we've covered. Microgreens generate your baseline cash income. Herbs sustain it month after month. Mushrooms spike it during peak seasons. Lavender creates a secondary revenue line with minimal ongoing labor. The animal systems, rabbits, quail, snails, those aren't just separate income streams. They're the connective tissue. Every waste product from one system becomes the input for another. Rabbit manure feeds your compost, which enriches your microgreen soil. Quail droppings accelerate mushroom substrate colonization. Snail waste becomes part of your lavender fertilizer program. Herb trimmings feed rabbits and quail. Spent mushroom substrate becomes garden mulch. This isn't 8 businesses running side by side. It's one integrated production system where your costs per unit of output fall continuously as the system matures. An operator in Portland, Oregon documented this explicitly. In month 1, her combined setup cost $2,800. Her income was $1,400. In month 6, her monthly income had climbed to $4,200. Her monthly costs had dropped to $900. By month 12, she was generating $5,200 monthly against operating costs of just over $1,100. The system had become more efficient, not through any new investment, but through optimization and interconnection of existing components. She runs this from a half-acre suburban lot. Nothing visible from the street, no permits filed, no violations issued. Complete regulatory invisibility. The math compounds. That's the revelation. Not that you can make $5,000 monthly from your backyard. Plenty of channels tell you that. The secret is that the cost structure inverts as your system matures. Most businesses require higher investment and labor to scale. This one requires the opposite. Your year 2 costs are lower than your year 1 costs. Your year 3 revenue is higher than your year 2 revenue, while your maintenance time actually decreases because the systems regulate each other. A mealworm colony that costs $80 in startup becomes the protein source for quail, which reduces your quail feed expenses. Quail droppings enrich your microgreen substrate, which reduces your soil amendment costs. Reduced costs mean higher profit margins on the same revenue. That's not luck. That's system design. Here's what you can do this week. Pick one system. Just one. Not because you need to launch everything simultaneously, but because understanding how a single unit works teaches you how integration happens later. Start with microgreens if you want immediate, visible cash flow. Start with herbs if you prefer something that doesn't require constant attention. Start with mushrooms if you have the capital up front and want faster per-unit returns. Choose based on your space and your schedule, not based on what sounds most impressive. The system works because it's designed for sustainability, not for ego. Your backyard has been a liability on your property tax assessment. Unused square footage, maintenance burden, grass to cut. This reframes it. 8 systems, under 800 combined square feet, generating $5,000 monthly at full maturity, and your neighbor never sees any of it. The invisible income system isn't hidden because it's illegal. It's hidden because nobody thinks to look for it. The systems integrate so thoroughly that they occupy less space than a single traditional garden. The output is collected discreetly. The infrastructure is mundane. Buckets, bins, standard gardening equipment. There's nothing to detect, because there's nothing that reads as a commercial operation to anyone passing by. That's the advantage that stays after the money starts coming. You've created a production system that's profitable, legal, invisible, and efficient. Most people can't have all 4. You can. Thank you for watching. If this framework interests you, the actual integration mechanics, the month-by-month financial projections, the sourcing networks for each system, we've compiled everything into our complete backyard production guide. Links in the description and pinned in the comments. Subscribe now so you never miss when we drop the next system breakdown. Hit that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next one.